Hello, and welcome to another episode of Philosophical Bones. I'm Nick,
I'm Keith.
and hope your day is going well.
Yeah, me too.
I never said that before,
Yeah, right.
but I just want to wish you a
And
good
a
day,
good day
or a
to
good
you.
night, or a good morning, whatever it may be,
Whenever you're listening to this.
whenever you're listening. I always just thank you for listening. So anyway, today we're doing question 18, and this is kind of an interesting one for me because I thought this would make an interesting debate, and it is something that honestly every person in sometime in their life
Yeah.
ask themselves, like, if I could, would I? And so the question today is, if you could, would you want to live forever?
See, that's so rough. Like, because the way I look at it is like my take on it is the Highlander movies. And you see everybody around you die.
Oh, by the way, we should preface when we say you want to live forever, or if you could live forever, we're saying, or we're not taking. How do I say this? If
Are you thinking of like without consequence?
yeah,
Like,
pretty much like you can't die.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it'd be by like natural
a
means.
true immortal.
a true moral.
That's why.
Sorry, I had to stumble on that.
Well,
one, but
that's why I was saying I wanted to wait on using that
Yeah.
phrase. Like a true immortal
Yeah.
is.
you didn't want to. You wanted to use the phrase, or you wanted to use live forever instead of saying immortal.
Yeah, because I want to say because there's a difference.
Okay.
You know, like say like I'm going to go back to the analogy of like Highlanders.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they can die is having their head cut off, so they can still die. But here's my thing: everybody has a fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a fear.
Oh,
of death. Everybody has. Everybody given the choice.
If they say they don't fear death, it's like there is actually something wrong with them.
Right. You know,
wrong
and
with their brain.
Yeah, like even like one-celled organisms have a sense of self-preservation because that's
Well, that goes with like procreation too.
exactly. And well, really, what it boils down to is the fear of death.
Oh.
Like if something threatens you, like look at a deer.
Mm-hmm.
Look at a deer. Like say you walk up to a deer in the wild, they're going to be weary of you
Mm-hmm.
because at the core of what it is a fear of death.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because they're going to be like, oh, this thing is going to harm me.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to go with that.
The fight or flight mechanism.
Yeah. It's like I
Well,
think.
that's in humans. Yeah, fight or flight.
Yeah. Well, I think all living things do have a sense of understanding of bodily harm and not wanting to die.
Totally.
And that doesn't really go into like procreation. It's like just not wanting to die.
Mm-hmm. Actually, no. Well, I'm going to cut you off. I know you probably want to go. a
No,
little bit
you're fine.
longer, but because it popped in my head and I don't want to forget about it. I just realized in a way, like, and people always say this too, is a way that we kind of can't, like, people do try to live forever in this way
Yeah.
is through procreation. Through
Yes.
having children and families.
Like
or even
the last name moving on.
yeah. No, and it is one of those things I think about. It's like, oh well, you know, people had families like, you know, before me, like my grandparents, great grandparents, great grandparents. But the thing is too is like they were like, okay, that's a way of like pushing on my name, my family name, or
A legacy.
my legacy. But the thing is that unfortunately has happened, or it happened. It's not so much now because we can get that kind of information of like people before us, but really, like now, like when if someone asks you who's your great grandfather,
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know.
I have no idea who mine is.
Well, my great grandfather was in Dublin, and there's like God.
I'm sure we could go back in one of those like ancestry
I would love
pages
I would love to do that.
and stuff and find out, but it's like it takes some work.
Yeah. Well,
And those people at the time were more like they were having kids because that's what you did.
yeah.
Or it was just kind of because like there really wasn't much contraception, honestly. But but at the same time too, that was a way that they were passing on what they knew as, and actually you see that in trades, like bricklayers in like Boston or something. It's like, oh, they'd have kids so they could pass on what they knew to their children, and they could continue a business.
Right.
And I'm sure the same
Well,
thing.
well,
Like,
well, I
you know,
wanna
well,
use the
you look
word-
actually the royal family, like they had to have children to continue on the bloodline,
And
so
a
they could
lot of
continue
them
the ruling
married.
class.
A lot of them married each
Oh,
other.
yeah, intermarried, yeah.
And that's kind of a crazy thought.
Oh yeah,
You know, because it's like moving on your lineage,
yeah.
like your bloodline.
But-
and I where I want to go with this, like just bear with me here for
Yeah.
a second, is I think this is where religion comes from. The fear of death.
Yeah.
I think,
totally.
I think all living things don't want to die.
No.
You know, like so you're.
Well, they say too when people when they become close to death, they actually become religious.
Well, yeah, look at like death row inmates. You know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've read a lot about that shit.
Yeah.
But you know, like the fear of death, I think drives a lot of like culture.
Mm.
You know, think about like the Vatican, stuff like that. You know, like it's religion of like okay, this is where not so much of this is where we came from, but like, hey, what happens after?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I think any human being just right off the bat would say, yeah, I don't want to die. I don't ever want to die. But here's the thing. Like I read a lot of comic books, like the Immortals, stuff like that. If you're a true immortal and nothing can take you out of this world, you watch everything around you wilt and die.
No, that's true.
You know, like, so think about that for a second.
Well, I actually, just because we mentioned it, we talked about last week on a Nerdy Bones with Sam Kinison. His last words were,
Yeah, I don't want to die. Yeah, exactly.
I just felt that was relevant.
It was super relevant.
But yeah, but like, I mean, of course, it's one of those things too. When like, you know, when you're our age, when you're in we're in our 30s.
Yeah, I'm in my late 30s.
Yeah, mid to late 30s. We're not 40 yet though, and we're still like, okay, we're young, but it's like if you know somebody dies around our age, we're like, oh man, like
Right.
of course they didn't want to die, but then you're like, oh, you get to like 90 and you're like, well, do I still really want to be here?
Yeah,
and what am I really getting out of life right now?
Yeah, well, and that's because your body's breaking down.
Yeah.
And like, I hope this isn't in bad taste, but one of my best friends in the world, his name was Donovan Payne. He's the man that did all my tattoos, and we recently lost him last year. And when I heard about that happening, I was just like, what? No. You know, like, it's like death is a concept that it's really hard for humans to like wrap their mind around. It's
even
like,
though we know everything. Well, we know everything about the physical aspect of death.
Yeah, and we're at that age. You know, like piggybacking on what you just said, like we're at that age to where like the people that we grew up with, it's kind of not unheard of them starting to drop off.
Yeah.
You know, and I hate to use that.
Well, now I see a lot of my friends now is just having kids.
Right.
Which is a way that they kind of keep immortality. Right. And what's cool now, I mean, with the way the technology is advanced is, you know, somebody who is some kid, you know, 100 years from now, could actually find out like what his great grandfather was like, through like videos or like social media.
You're making a great point.
You have a digital archive of information.
100 years from now,
as far as we know, it'll still be there.
100 years from now, our voices will still be on the internet.
But you know, that's one thing with when it came to books, photographs, just the written word. You look back at even like, you know, caveman, like BC times, you still see like pictographs and stuff on. I was actually just reading about that yesterday with like Native American cultures in the U.S. Pictographs and pictograms, I think they're like two different things. Well,
pictographs are like designs.
Yeah. But they still, in a way, they immortalized themselves,
right?
By having that stuff left there. But nobody knows who made that. You know those, but in a way, they've kind of lived forever because of that. And you know, and with the way that technology is now, we kind of can live forever through our digital selves.
Well, like I said a second ago, like our voices are forever going to be on the internet.
And that's one thing I want to point to too. Is like what we're putting out right now is like
it's forever going to be there.
You know, if I had you know, I don't ever plan on having any children, but if I had like a nephew,
not on purpose anyway,
nephew or a niece, which my brother's my brother and his girlfriend are having a kid in September.
Nice.
Which I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
I'll be an uncle for the first time, but it's like, you know, maybe one day that kid will be in, you know, his 30s, and maybe like what we're saying right now will still be out there and be like, yeah, I want to know, I want to have my uncle.
I want to know my Uncle Nick.
Yeah, maybe I unexpectedly die at some point, and everyone's like, oh, I want to know what he was like.
And then he's like, he go back and listen to this.
And you're like, oh, well, he did this podcast for a while. You know, you want to learn about him? Like, he did that. Or like, I've written tons of stuff too. I have like notebooks full of stuff.
Right.
And that's one thing about I will actually say about my dad. The only way he kind of lives on, honestly, is through me, my brother, and my sister.
There you go. Yeah.
And you know, in our immediate family. That's really like. Other than that, there's really not much because he did start painting like right the last few years of his life. I still own. I have one of his paintings hanging out in my house that I absolutely love, and I have one I did when I was like right next to him. But I'm like, really, like, he only lives through like photographs.
Wow, same.
And memories from us because, you know, he died around the time when when technology was really coming up. Like Facebook had only really been around for maybe a few years.
Yeah,
and he used it a little bit, but still, it was nowhere as prolific, and Instagram wasn't really a thing yet. And he died about. It was 8.5 years ago.
Yeah, you told me that before. Yeah.
But it's kind of unfortunate. Like I don't have like my brother actually sent me a DVD with like video, like VHS converted to DVD of like my dad. It was the first time I heard my dad like his voice. In years.
That's crazy.
And literally like over 8 years. Unfortunately, I said to my brother, I was like, yeah, it was cool seeing that, but unfortunately, like, I didn't really get to hear my dad for the most part.
Yeah.
I got to see him, and it was kind of crazy to see him again, like especially with like my 4 or 5 year old self.
That's crazy.
But
well, like I lost,
and I always say actually, it's unfortunate that for instance, my brother's girlfriend, like she'll never get to know him. She'll never get to know his life. My brother's talk, I'm sure, said like just
stories,
told her tons of stories about my dad, and even like his future grandchild, like my brother will only be able to tell him stories about his grandfather.
Yeah.
But what I want to get back to, I'm sorry, I went off on a long little tangent there, because I honestly, like I like to talk about my dad.
Yeah.
It's one of those things when you lose a parent, you really
like I lost my mom when I was 7.
Exactly.
And like they kind of like piggybacking on what you just said. Like I don't even remember what her voice sounded like.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. Yeah, my dad. Like I have a hard time trying to remember his voice.
Because like when I was 7, that would have been.
They always say that's the first thing to go.
Yeah. When I was 7, that would have been. I was born in 82, so it would have been 89. Mm-hmm. No. 80 yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But it was before social media at all.
Yeah.
And like the only thing I have from her is pictures.
Yeah.
So like that's getting back to our initial question, nostalgic stuff.
Yeah. Although the thing I wanted to point in the end was if there was something like this out there, like a podcast or a YouTube video of my dad, that I would get a chance to know what my dad was really like.
See, that's awesome.
Besides what I knew about him just from seeing him and talking to him. I'd fucking love that.
Oh, dude, yeah.
If all of a sudden there was like a notebook of shit my dad wrote, or like some kind of diary, I would fucking love that. Yep. I would absolutely love. Like, I would actually talk to my mom again for a minute, be like, I want that. Like, you need to send that shit to me.
The big thing that I have from my mom is she was an artist.
Yeah.
So I have a book of her drawings. And,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so cool, man. She like my favorite one that I actually put in a frame and it's in my bedroom. She drew Jim Morrison on the cover. You know the cover of the album?
Oh, yeah.
She drew that. Fucking her shit's almost photorealistic.
Wow.
And like there's one on my fridge actually. She drew of a horse. Yeah, but getting back to like, would you want to be immortal?
Yeah. Sorry, we went off on a long tangent.
No, that was a good tangent.
That was a good tangent in telling how people kind of are immortal in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
At least as far as like our capacity.
Right. So like where my mind went when you were like talking about that is like the movie 300. And they're talking about how like we're gonna die here, but they're gonna remember us forever.
That's true.
Like that's kind of like that. Just kind of like when
they were the spark for democracy as well.
Yeah, exactly. But what I was thinking about was like during you talking about your dad is like you're never gonna forget him.
No.
And I'll never forget my mom.
Me and my brother will talk all the time, and a lot of times we'll bring up our dad.
Yeah.
We like if we were the guy, we're the people we are today because of him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of people that like live here. I'm going to use the word live in infamy. Like think about like Butch Cassidy. Think about Julius Caesar. Like these people, Alexander the Great. These people that are technically in their memory immortal.
Yeah.
Like they're never going to go anywhere.
Well, no, I actually want to use one example too. Superman.
Okay.
We talked about that. I don't know if we talked about it on this show or Nerdy Bones, but in a way, like it's always like, I'm going to bring the point is if aliens were to come to Earth, like, and they were doing archaeology on us, how would they know that Superman wasn't nearly as real as say you or me?
I remember
because there's more documentation of Superman out there than there is of us.
I remember this exact conversation. We were talking about this.
So in a way, Superman is just as real as me or you.
Well, I said Spider-Man was just as real as Jesus.
And well, no, you could say the same thing with that.
Yeah, that was my exact phrase. It was like because, like you said, there's just just as.
And
much.
how do you know people 300 years from now won't actually think that same thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, fucking this. What the hell?
Yeah,
like.
If just something gets lost in translation.
Yeah, like say there is a huge disconnect in society to where stuff breaks down, and there's like a Mad Max style type of whatever, and society gets lost, and 300 years from now,
how will people not know that the character Spider-Man wasn't just a fictional character, and then
Jesus wasn't, or just like whatever.
Oh, dude, you make a good point. That's actually a cool thought.
Say like 300 years from now, society gets completely lost.
Yeah.
Somebody finds the Bible. Somebody finds a Spider-Man comic book.
Yeah.
How do they know which one of those was like discerned in what way or the other? Like Okay,
Yeah.
so the Bible is this thing.
Well, the Bible doesn't have an author on it. But,
Well, you get what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
though. Like these,
but how do they know that someone just isn't like telling stories?
Right.
It's like it says written by and drawn by. It's like how do they know it wasn't like a story about them like being told by somebody?
exactly. You know,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
You know,
know?
the Church of Spider-Man.
the Church of the Webhead.
Yeah. And they actually take it as gospel.
Yeah,
Well, it's
yeah.
like people actually think of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and they start worshiping an atomic bomb.
That's right. Yeah, same thing in Fallout. They do that in Fallout too.
Yeah. What was the name of the church in that?
I don't remember, but I can completely picture that in my head. I
Yeah.
know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, like a society that's so far removed from where we are right now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is still kind of on the subject, but a society so far removed from where we are right now, how would they know like these stories that we've left behind?
Yeah.
Like what's real and what's not real? Like, or
That's a good point.
what's folklore, what's religious, what's a telling of something that actually happened. You know, like there's
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of immortality.
Huh.
See, like, because Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, John Constantine, Preacher, whatever, all these characters are gonna far outlive us.
Oh yeah.
You know, like they're gonna far out, like they've already outlived their creators.
Yeah.
You know, in most of those cases.
No, it's true.
Like last week was Batman's 80th birthday. You know,
Yeah, they had
they
issue 1000 of Detective Comics.
yeah, dude. You know, like so that right there, Bob Kane. That's immortality for Bob Kane.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, that's immortality for Stan Lee. You know, like Stan Lee is one of those people. If society doesn't break down, Bob Kane, Stan Lee.
But when we think of immortality, it's like we think of we don't see that far. Like we don't see like a million years in the future. Or like we think of like 1,000, maybe 10,000. If somebody says like 50,000 or 100,000, we're like, whoa, that's a lot of time. Because
So-
even humanity hasn't really been around that long in the grand scheme of things.
I love that you say that. That's awesome kind of way to
Yeah.
look at it. So my question, true immortality.
Mm-hmm.
Say you're here till the end of days.
Yeah.
And then the earth implodes and you truly cannot die. So your fate's actually floating in space. Would you want that? You know, like think about true immortality.
You know, it's funny. I have a good way to say something about that. Like, so, say you drink, or like I think of it this way. Like when I get a hangover the next day, I'm like, so was it worth it for me to have that hangover? Like, did I have a good time?
I've been struggling with that myself.
Was it worth it for me to
Yeah.
is it worth me feeling
in
shit
the moment?
today
In the moment.
for today? And if you can say like, yeah, I had a really good time last night, and it was kind of worth the hangover.
But what about
Then
when
it
you can't?
was
what-
worth it
what-
drinking that much.
What about when you can't remember half the night? You know, and that's
Which actually could totally relate to immortality.
yeah, exactly.
Because you probably couldn't even remember a quarter of what you did.
Yeah,
You just remember bits and pieces. I mean, think about like over like just our lives in general, just being in our 30s. How much of our lives do we actually really remember? We get bits and pieces of stuff.
over like the last 6 months,
Stuff
dude.
just certain things trigger certain things.
Yeah, but that's kind of an interesting thing to look at it that way too, though. You know, like it's almost like time slipping at that point. Well, at least in my experience, like it's almost like time slipping. It's like you're like you said, drinking, having a good time, and then blam, it's the next morning.
Yeah.
And, and like
Yeah.
yeah.
And also, if you're living that long, you don't feel like you have much consequence.
Well, you wouldn't have. Like the
Even if you get stuck in jail for 50 years, it's like
who
big
cares?
deal.
Who fucking cares? Just
It's just another experience at that point.
That's a great yeah, dude. Like,
Well, you brought up a good point of Vandal Savage.
well, that's what I was gonna get at.
Okay.
Because like Vandal Savage, he just cannot die.
Well, for those who don't know, Vandal Savage is a comic character who
DC character.
he's a DC character who got he was a caveman actually,
Yes, he was. Yeah.
and an asteroid hit the ground, and he all of a sudden got gained immortality.
True immortality.
True immortality, where he couldn't be hurt or killed.
Yeah, you could shoot him through
died.
you could shoot him through the head, and it
He'd
wouldn't.
still always just keep living.
One of my favorite storylines about him was that I think I forget what the comic is called, but Superman gets transported through time.
Oh no, this is exactly what I'm thinking of. It was in the cartoon.
Oh, it was
Superman cartoon, yeah.
Yeah, well,
It was like 50,000 years in the future or something,
Yeah.
and everybody on Earth was dead.
and he's still there.
And he was still there, and he was like, yeah, I really wish I wouldn't have done that.
And
he actually he finally gained the perspective, like, oh, I kind of won, but I don't want this.
yeah, well, and at that point, the sun is a red dwarf star, so Superman doesn't have his powers.
Yeah.
So Superman starts living with Vandal Savage and like tending farm and
all
this crazy.
You know, here's
shit.
another thing about immortality though: is there is really no such thing as forever.
No.
And actually, when you say someone, you know, you have when you're married to someone or a spouse, it's like, I'm gonna love you forever and all this. It's like, no, you're not.
No,
it's like, I'm gonna love you for the next 50 years, and then we'll die
until we
and
expire.
If there's a heaven, like, yeah, we'll still be together in heaven. But you know what? I'm sure after like millennia, 100 years, 200 years, we'll probably start fucking other people. If there's such a thing, they'll start having an open relationship.
After 100 years, they need some strange.
Yeah.
After 100 years,
I don't think you could do 100,000 years the same woman.
No,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
as much as you love someone, you'd be like, after 100,000 years, I'm like, at least on the physical side.
Yeah.
Even though at that point you're in heaven. And
well, like
I'm getting on this crazy thing.
Yeah.
Now,
but like the big thing with me is like, okay, say you're truly immortal and you have children. You're gonna watch those kids grow old and die.
Yeah,
No,
that's totally true.
Probably more than once.
Yeah,
probably more than once.
That's what you see with some Anne Rice books with vampires. Like, oh, well, I had children, or
I wish I knew the writer of Highlander offhand.
Yeah,
but Connor McLeod watches 3 generations of his own kids grow old and die.
And that's that is the hard part right there. Is like, you're immortal.
You're
like you're gonna watch your wife grow old and die.
And,
this whole question kind of came up to me because I was watching it.
And then there's adapting to new generations. Like, you go from CDs to DVDs to, that's just kind of the analogy I'm making. Well, you go from like 8 tracks to vinyl.
One thing people don't think about though too is if you were to become immortal, you would actually have to figure out a way to kind of reinvent yourself.
You would have to hide your identity.
You would totally have to hide it
because 60 years down the line. You're like, oh, this is you, and this is your birth date, and you still look like this, and like
the whole Keanu Reeves thing.
You would have to move every 30, 40 years,
get a new identity,
and just reinvent. And like that's like true immortality. That's what it would be.
Yeah,
unless you were like some Vandal Savage type of character, they just kind of like lived outside the law. And just did whatever they fucking wanted.
He just kind of disappeared on and off.
Right. And like you said, he was a caveman.
Well, and you could just honestly at that point just amass a wealth and status, and
that would be the benefit,
and like a castle and all that shit.
That would be the benefit of true immortality. Is like you would have a complete.
Well, you just keep like rebirthing yourself as your kid too. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I'm this guy's son. This guy died.
Exactly.
There are ways
never mind that.
There are ways around.
Never mind that I look just like him.
Yeah, there are ways around the whole thing. But yeah. But I think, I still don't think we've necessarily answered this question. If you could, would you want to live forever?
Me?
Yeah.
Me, myself, simply because of the fear of death, I would love to. But from what we've been talking about, the implications of it, it's got to come to an end at some point.
Yeah, no, I actually really agree with that. I would not want to live forever.
I wouldn't want to see the death of the universe.
And also it depends on like the shape of your body too, because I think that's one thing we didn't factor in. Was like, okay, how would you?
Do you age?
Do you age? But I feel like after a certain amount of time, you just get bored.
Well, I can't even tell you.
Actually, one thing I just thought it was Q from Star Trek.
Exactly.
Omnipotent beings who are immortal and can travel through time and everything else and just have
manipulate
absolute
reality.
Power. There is an episode of Voyager where at one point this guy like got sick of being alive and he wanted to kill himself, and they're like, you can't do that. It's like, why? I'm bored. Like, there's nothing left for this world, this universe to offer me.
Right.
And that's actually a very good point.
It is.
If you can get to that point where, we don't have the ability to kind of be anywhere, like pretty much be a god or God. But if you did, you would get bored at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
After a million years,
like
what else do you really have to experience?
And human life would become mundane. Be like, you would watch war and be like, whatever. Like, I've seen this.
You would not care.
Like, I've seen this 1,000 times.
And actually, like, I want to bring one point up is I was watching where I got this really question from was the newest season of Santa Clarita Diet.
I saw that was up. I didn't start.
Oh, dude, I love that show. It's so
me
good.
too, man.
But anyway, like at one point it was like one question was kind of during the show that was brought up was, does if you were able to live forever, unconditional love loses its meaning?
No, that's a good point.
Because
It would be all trivial.
It would.
It'd be all trivial.
You know, it's like the question of like,
Like,
oh, well, if you could be with if you could be with someone you love for the rest of time, would you?
Well, that's the vampire question.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
like,
I mean, as much as I could love someone, I don't think I could spend like the next 1,000 years with them all the time. And maybe I could if I met the right person. But,
well, and I'm sure there's going to be people out there that'll hear this and be like, "Oh, I love my."
Well, no, like, oh, I have that. But you know what? Give that shit.
Give that 10,000 years. You're going to get on each other's nerves. And then give me an answer. You're going to get in each other's nerves.
Yeah.
And, like something's going to piss you off at some point.
Yeah, and you're going to be like, at least you're like, I need like, give me like 50 years off from this.
Let's like take 100 years and we'll meet back up. Yeah, because nothing.
Let's take a break for 100 years.
Because
and in that aspect, like nothing's really changing.
Two immortals, whatever. 100 years.
But when people, like I said earlier, when people say, "Oh, I'd love you forever," we don't have that long a span. We don't have that kind of imagination to think of like, past like 100 years or even 500 years. People can't really look past 1,000 years.
I don't think human beings have the capacity to understand the word forever.
We don't understand. We can't understand that amount of time because we don't live that long.
Yeah.
100. What I think the max amount of time in
110. I think is the oldest person I've ever seen.
No, that's like I think like around 125,
yeah.
120,
yeah.
125.
That's pretty fucking impressive.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty fucking. And they're miserable at that point.
Yeah,
but simply because their body breaking down.
That was one reason I had for smoking. I was like, well, I'm just killing off the years. Like I don't really want to be alive.
Yeah, I hear you, dude. I hear you.
But I quit smoking just because I'm like I just start feeling like shit.
Yeah, I'm super proud of you that you managed to knock that out of your life, man.
Well, I'm close to a month by now.
That's fucking awesome.
As of this recording,
I can't even tell you how many times I've like tried to put down the nicotine and I go to vaping and then I'm like, oh, vaping's not enough, and let's pick up the cigarettes again, and it's too easy.
So this is becoming. We fucking hit a lot on this one, dude.
Yeah, we did.
This actually gave us a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it was a good one.
And it wasn't even just all about like, oh, well, if you want to live forever, like, or would you want to live forever? It's like we hit a lot of shit.
We hit a lot of philosophical stuff too. Dude,
totally.
Hashtag philosophical.
That's why it's called Philosophical Bones. It's called it for a reason, goddammit.
Again, dude. Again, I love when I'm your guest on the show.
Like I know every week, man.
Well, I'm just like we said this last week. I'm just the easiest guest.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing I like about you, I like doing this with you a lot, is we tend to have really good debates.
Well, and I was actually on Jimmy, one of my coworkers, listens to the show.
Oh, nice.
And like, I'm shout out Jimmy. What's up, brother?
Shout out Jimmy.
Like, he specifically said to me that you and I have a good back and forth.
Oh yeah.
That was like because I have my style, you have your style, and we just like bounce off each other. So we have good conversations. So I'm happy to be here.
Always gotta get a little pain in the end, don't we?
Yeah. Dude, we gotta fucking toot our own horn a little bit, man.
And as I always say, even though it is yet to happen, but I'm still just gonna keep saying it. Maybe one day it will happen. If you want to pose a question or even come on the show and debate me, hit us up at nerdbonescast@gmail.com or on Instagram or Facebook.
That's right.
Instagram is probably the easiest.
That's our
fastest way to get hold of me.
Instagram is our most used media.
Yeah, I use that most of all.
Yeah.
So.
And not to mention the YouTube comments.
Oh yeah. And if you want to listen to us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like there's no video up, but
it's audio.
It's audio only,
but like True Crime Corner actually got comments from an actual criminologist. So like that's a quick way to like. We're easy to reach.
Yeah. But thank you for listening. And I hope you join us for another episode at some point. We have so many different questions out there.
Dude, yeah.
Even if you don't listen to them all, it's like, hey, I'm sure you got another question you want to listen to.
Yeah.
And hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. And like I said last week on, if you find this question interesting, talk about it with a friend of yours or a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Because it's kind of cool to create that debate with someone else and have that conversation. It's fun.
It's just a little conversation fuel.
Exactly.
I just came up with that right now.
Yeah, so I think that from now on, I'm going to start saying like, hey, if you enjoyed this, like start talking about it with somebody you know. Let's talk about a friend.
Well, you've mentioned it more than once.
Yeah, because I think it's a good way to just kind of keep the conversation going. And these are like me and you really enjoy doing this a lot.
Oh, dude, fuck yeah.
We love talking about this kind of thing, and it creates great you get a really good sense of what someone is like from it. Even actually, It's even a good like first date, second date question.
There you go. Well, like,
I wouldn't bring it on a first date.
No,
It
yeah,
might be
yeah,
a little
yeah,
much. Like, hey, would you want to live forever? Who the fuck is this guy?
Well, one of my favorite ones that we've ever done was the very first one that I was on, which is what's your definition of evil?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that was my personal favorite one. If you guys haven't heard that one yet and you're enjoying,
that was question 1.
Yeah,
Or 1 or 2.
I think it was 1.
Okay.
If you guys haven't heard that episode yet and you're starting to enjoy the show, go back, and that was one of him and I just delved deep on.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
So anyway, so you got nothing else you want to add?
No.
All right, I think we hit everything. Like I said, again.
I'll put it this way. In my initial reaction, yes, I would want to live forever.
Okay.
But in thinking about it, would it be a good idea? Maybe
in practicality,
not.
no.
Yeah, maybe not.
Okay, it all depends on certain circumstances too.
Yeah.
So, that's why it's a philosophical question.
That's right.
We don't really have an answer. We try to, but it might not really work out. So, this has been question 18. If you could, would you want to live forever? And I hope you enjoyed, and keep thinking.